All right. Well, welcome everyone to another episode of Culture Eats Everything, where we hang out with great leaders, superintendents, CEOs, people leading organizations and cultures, and learn from them. And today we have a great friend of ours, Dr. Kathleen Hermsmeyer, and she's been a teacher. She's a superintendent, so she doesn't have to brag on herself. She runs a very large organization that serves thousands of students. She's got somewhere around 1,200-ish employees and lots of locations of a charter school network in Southern California, soon to be also in Tennessee. So Kathleen, fill in the details. How'd you get to being a superintendent and running this big organization?
Oh, wow. Well, it's definitely my story is one of being offered a tremendous number of opportunities throughout my life. A lot of amazing opportunities that I was definitely not prepared for when I was offered them, but I took them anyway and started a bunch of jobs, ill prepared or sort of faking my way, fake it till you make it sort of a thing.
Sure.
When I've always been drawn to children, enjoy working with children, love the challenge of getting kids to learn. And when my husband was transferred for his job to England, I followed and I was able to get a job off of his permit. And I had a master's degree in computer-based education. This is back in 1989. Okay. So there was no internet or anything. It was kind of computer-based education. It was more like Oregon Trail computer-based education. And I got hired in England, in London, for an international school as a computer teacher for secondary, middle, and high school. And they assumed my master's degree was in computer science. They didn't understand what the difference was. So I didn't explain it to them. They didn't ask, so I didn't tell, and I figured I could figure it out. And that's basically what I've done throughout. When I got this job 24 years ago as the executive director of this charter school, originally just one charter school, and we've grown. We had 17 students, and I definitely did not know what I was doing. I was 33 years old. I was young, and but we figured it out. And that's the confidence that sometimes too overconfident maybe.
Hmm. Well,
My,
that's awesome. Say a little bit about the Star Trek theme that's floating behind you. What is that?
oh, yeah, sure. We have a yearly theme at our school, and every year we take a look at our goal, and we try to figure out a theme that goes along with the goal that is fun and everybody can gather around. And this year it's we're boldly going where no school has gone before, and it's all systems go. We're focusing on systems. The teachers are focusing on systems in their classrooms. We're focusing on systems in our administrative central office, and so it sort of gets everybody excited for it. And at a big kickoff event, people dress up, and we have a costume contest for the people who want to do it. Nobody's forced to do it, but it's fun.
Yeah.
We had a year there where there's no place like Springs, which was like a Wizard of Oz theme. We had a Camp Springs year, so it's been a fun time.
Yeah. Well,
Really.
and say more about that focus for you guys for a year.
Yeah.
What does that do for you, or why
Well,
do you leverage that?
well, ultimately, we used to have a lot of goals for every year, and we had a lot of objectives. And my big push as the leader of the school would be to try to explain to all the people all the different objectives. And here's our 10 goals for the year. Here's a bunch of things we're doing, and here's what you need to do. And that got frustrating because it wasn't really making a big impact. And people, when I asked them, what are our goals for the year, they couldn't tell me. So that's the problem. You're not going to reach the goal if people don't really know what the goal is. And so for us, having simplifying the goal has been a game changer, really. This last 5 years, I think we've been doing one goal a year, and it's an expansive goal. We had Voice was last year, where we were focusing on feedback, conversations, and getting feedback from our students, and having those individual one-on-one meetings and things like that. So that was last year. The year before, we had one on habits, like atomic habits. It was a superhero year, but we were focusing on really high quality habits.
Okay. And what I guess that focus or theme, it gives you a reason to just revisit it and talk about it. You said that you used to have, when you first got this job, one site, 17 kids. Now I think you've got 20 some locations, and I said earlier, thousands and thousands.
21. Well, 22 locations, 8 schools. Yeah.
Yeah.
8 schools, but 22. So, 11,000 students.
And how have you grown like that? What causes that?
Well, paying attention to obviously for us, we got into this with a mission-driven purpose to redesign education, public education, and to use research-based methods to ensure that kids got excited, because there is there's a correlation, a downward correlation for engagement for every year that a child stays in school. So every year they get less and less engaged. It's almost a perfect correlation. And we wanted to change that. And we know that the things that we do in primary education, we follow the child, we present things in a way that's very interesting to them. We focus on their interests. We understand that they can't listen to a lecture for 20 or 30 minutes. And you know what I mean? Because they won't put up with it. A 4 or 5-year-old will not put up with it. So, but what happens is, as they get older, they put up with it, and then their engagement drops, and they don't become less curious. They're still curious in their private lives, but we want them to be curious at school too. And so that was our big vision. We also understood that there was a lot of research going on in education that the traditional public school system was not really employing. And so that's what we wanted to do. So I think that focus on really using an innovative, research-based, mission-driven approach, and really listening to our parents and what the parents understood was missing in their child's traditional education, helped to propel us forward as with enrollment. And we have not done a one-size-fits-all. That's just not our way. I think it works for a lot of other people, but for us, every one of our school programs is quite different from each other. We don't have a common, everybody's using the same curriculum, everybody's on the same page the same day, or anything like that, because we understand it's case by case and teacher by teacher making those decisions for kids and for their class.
Yeah.
So.
And right now you have this clarity and this passion around it. Has that always been there? Is that what has been driving you, and therefore it kept growing and evolving? Is it something?
It's always been there for me. It's always been there for me. Okay. But I definitely, if we think about what lessons that I've learned over the years, as I'm in a very interesting position in that I have been in this role for this is my 24th year. And I have grown up as a CEO, and in the beginning I thought, well, I'm the boss. I can just tell people what they need to do because I know exactly what they need to do. Okay. And I could just tell them what to do, and they're going to do it, and that actually doesn't work. If FYI, I wish it did. It just feels so
Yeah.
good that it would work, but it doesn't work. So you can't do it, and so my evolution over these years has been, you know, understanding that my job is to help everybody else believe in what we're doing and understand how they can impact and drive forward our mission and vision themselves. Because with the force of my will, and I have a pretty strong will, but I can't do it by
Mhm.
myself. Every single person in the organization has to be driving forward this mission
Mhm.
and vision. And it has gotten more crystallized over the years when we've understood. One of the other lessons I've learned is how many repetitions of things people really need. People aren't always receptive when you're telling them what needs to happen, or when you're having this conversation and you think everybody's on the same page. They're not actually always receptive to the message. And so, for whatever reason, who knows what's going on in their life, they just don't really understand what you're driving at. And it's sort of one of those things where you think you you keep beating this dead horse, like you are telling them over and over and over again, and talking about this same conversation over and over again. And that's just about the time when some people are starting to get it. So you can't reinforce your message enough. It's there every opportunity when you're speaking to a group or working with um, a team, is an opportunity to reinforce the big messages, that the big important messages
Mhm.
that you want
Yeah.
everybody to know, everybody to keep in mind, that
When you,
North Star idea.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Clarity, reinforcing it. I think I mean, I've actually heard that said before. I've heard you say it too, but yeah, and it's like when people are starting to when you're tired of saying it, people are just starting to get it. And so the vision has to be
That
set
is,
on
that is so true.
Now back to when you said like you can't get it done through your force of will. Um, when did you learn that, or how did you learn that? And was there like a size that the organization had to grow to when you were like, oh, I can't lead this in the same way that I have before?
Well, I had over the years, I think the first 5 or 6 years, it took me a long time to actually figure out that it wasn't working. And I just thought I had to be clearer about it. But write it down and have a handbook and have a guidebook. And if they really understood exactly what I was telling them to do, they would just do it. But I think it was 5 or 6 years in, and we had a pretty big, organizationally, a big threat to our existence, an existential threat. And that was when it was clear to me that the team, that I needed to work with the team more. The team all needs to be rowing, and your leadership team needs to be rowing in the right direction. Everybody needs to be kind of cross trained on things. We need to be as a group. I can't be the only one doing that job of looking at the whole picture of what's going on. So
Mhm.
that's when I built up a top leadership team, like your C-suite sort of idea, where we sat and worked on these issues together every week and pushed forward different things. But the organization was getting bigger at that point. I think we were about 4,000 kids. So it was, like you say, the early days, I was hiring everybody. Every single person was hired by me, trained by me, and everything else in those early days. And
Mhm.
of course, you have a little more influence. But one thing that we're working on now with the size we are now is ensuring that, that everybody's opinion matters, not mine alone. And that's one of the dangers of being a founder CEO, and being so long lived in this role,
Mhm.
is that, people think I need to endorse everything, every single thing, and that shouldn't be, that everybody should have that top authority, all of my, key leaders.
Mhm.
So that's the kind of culture I'm trying to create now, where every leader is empowered and competent, capable,
Mhm.
understanding of the big picture,
Sure.
in a way that they haven't been before.
Yeah. And every time you change things like that, that has to change you, like the way you're used to leading or acting or interacting with people has to change your leadership and what they're used to doing or being expected of. How do you, like, what have been the things that have helped you get clear about the kind of culture you want to create or the kind of changes you need to make? You start realizing like if the vision keeps driving, it gets so much bigger than just you or your capacity.
That's right.
And
It's
so,
the
yeah, like,
capacity. I don't have the capacity to reach all those teachers. The right way is that each and every leader at each and every program that's working with those direct students is mission driven, passionate,
hmm,
understands what the priorities are and is focusing on them, so that we can, have students that are engaged in their own education. They are empowered to learn and all the things that we care about as an organization.
yeah, you're trying to get them to to have those same motivations or passions in
Right.
so but yeah, how do you know? How do you know if they do? How do you know if you're doing good at it? How do you know if you need to change? Or how have you learned to know, maybe is the question.
Well, that's there's a variety of data. In schools, we always say we look at multiple measures. We don't want to just look at standardized test scores for the kids. It's the same thing with the culture of the school, and it's not purely how many programs are hitting the ball out of the park when it comes to their students' results and their outcomes on tests. It's also all those other less measurable items that you see when you're walking through, when you are working, and have a team of people that are out in the different meetings and teams throughout the organization, and are reporting back on what's going on.
Mhm.
Because I would say that most organizations, no matter how big or small, they have certain departments that sort of work as an island, or they're not as close by. Maybe, we have some of our sites that are further away, a little more remote. They don't get as many visits. So how do we keep everybody, rowing in the right direction?
Mhm.
And that's very, very important. And it takes a village, that old expression, but it
Mhm.
does.
Yeah.
Um,
Have you had this passion, like 20 plus years in any organization is a long time. And, you've been driven by this mission. You have a personal passion for it and love, but has it always been there? And if it hasn't, what have you done to kind of recapture it?
Well, the biggest problem that we have as a network of schools is the fact that we're charter schools, and charter schools are inherently political.
Hmm.
And there have been battles fought related to charter school um, regulations and existence and funding and everything else. So a lot of times that kind of thing can be very exhausting. It's stuff I cannot control, but I have to be involved in, and I have to, work hard to work with my local legislators, assembly people, senators, and all of that, so that we can we can continue to exist. And that role for me has heightened as the school's gotten larger. So I've had to do a lot more political um, things, which takes me away from the whole reason I got into this work. which is the education, right? But I also know that my number one job is keep the school open and successful. And so that's my, number one job, right? So that's what everybody relies on me to do. So keeping good relationships with all of the entities that authorize us, that allow us to exist, the public opinion for charter schools, and keeping that, which is all areas that I was not trained in. I have a doctorate in curriculum and instruction. I have, a minor in educational administration. None of that was marketing, PR, lobbying, all of that stuff. But I end up doing quite a bit of it. So that's the part that sort of, if I do too much of it, I start to really hate my job. So that is, I have recognized that I am in charge of my schedule. I am, and I have to carve out, and I have to do it. It's like we all have to do things we don't really love, but I can also get a team around me to help, and then I can also make sure that I'm doing things. If I have a week where I have to go and do a whole day of lobbying, I have another day where I'm visiting sites and getting in the classroom, because that just fills my cup while something else is emptying it, So
yeah, it takes balance. That's a really good reminder, I think, for every leader out there, that you're in charge of your schedule. I have really dear friends from Kenya, and they now live and work full time in the States. But when they were first here and first here for a little while, and they're really sharp leaders, I kind of just asked them, like, hey, what's your commentary on our culture? What do you think about us? And they had some great things to say. And then I kind of lamented. I was like, yeah, but aren't we just too busy? We're always so busy. And their response was like, you're not too busy. You're exactly as busy as you choose to be.
Yeah.
You guys are so planned out and calendared and organized and all these things. And it, for me, was this like, oh yeah, I have agency over my schedule and busyness. It's like, I had forgotten that. I don't know. I need to be reminded of that. So that's a really great reminder. What else would you say?
I also think it's very important, just something that a lot of CEOs, especially newer CEOs, and all are also smaller, as company is smaller, you might economize by not getting yourself an assistant, or doing your own assistant work. I think that is a real benefit, to have a high quality administrative assistant that organizes your schedule, that you can, because what is on my calendar is what gets done in a day, and that stuff that's in your calendar lets you hit your goals or not hit them. And if you have a strong goal focus, and you have an assistant by your side helping you to organize your schedule, so that you are doing those things that are going to help you hit your goal, and clearing the way for you from some of the other things that you don't need to take your time up with because they're not as important. I think that's really, really valuable.
Yeah.
And that my assistant knows that she's responsible for, she has a big responsibility in terms of me meeting my goals for the year. And so, yeah.
Yeah. And the prioritization that comes through that. What else, when you look back over this career and growing this organization, lessons you've learned, what other things would you say, especially to maybe someone who's a young leader in an organization, or a young teacher, or a young administrator in a district? What would you say to them, or remind them, perhaps?
Well, one thing that I was given this advice by an old timer administrator when I was brand new. I don't know what we were, I went and visited his office, and I was like, where's your desk? Where's your file cabinets? Where's all your stuff? He's like, why do I need a file cabinet? I don't need file cabinets. Everybody does their own work. They bring it to me, then they take it away, because what am I am not, I am the leader of the organization. I am not rolling my sleeves up and doing all this work. And I have definitely taken that, because I have the tendency in some areas to want to roll my sleeves up and just do it, because I know how I want it done, and it's the right way. And But so I have a very small desk. I don't have any file cabinets in my office, and I do have a computer on my desk, but I don't sit at the computer. Well, now that we do Zooms, I do sit at the computer more, but I'm mostly in meetings. That's where I feel my, my benefit is. I'm not working on projects and getting paperwork done. So why do I don't need that stuff. And I think it is a good reminder sometimes in our physical environment, changing the physical environment to reinforce to yourself what you really are supposed to be doing. Because if you have a tendency to, get over involved and you don't have those things that might be handy for working, for doing that work. I like to have things in my vision that remind me of what my goals are, what my, like if I have a 90-day goal, transformational goal,
Mhm.
I want to have that in my sight in a beautiful way, some sort of a beautiful image of it so that I can, oh yeah, I remember I'm doing that. If it's in my vision, I will do it. It's in my, it's right there. That's part of Atomic Habits,
Mhm.
where, like if you have your running shoes by the door, you're more likely to go running, things like that.
Hmm.
Can't have everything out, though. But
But it's a good reminder, especially because most leaders get promoted and advance and grow because we like doing the work. We like rolling up our sleeves. We like getting crap done.
yeah,
And the farther along we go, the higher in an organization we go, the bigger the organization is, or the more influence we have, the less and less we can actually be the one doing the things, and the more and more we have to grow and learn different. So the physical reminder is really interesting. Um,
well,
and
and one of the most important things that we've learned through the, Transformational Phoenix group is that our number one job actually is to grow our people, right? So growing our team, me working with my team so that their capacity is expanded, is actually the most important work I can do.
yeah,
And so that changes, you don't feel guilty anymore by all I did all day was meet with people. And, that is no longer, it shouldn't be that you have a certain amount of work to get done as a CEO.
yeah. How are you
So,
growing more people? Well, on that note, and
but
it's funny.
how many real conversations have you had
Hmm.
with people that help to move them along on that path? I think like post pandemic, that was what I realized. There is a benefit to being in the office and having people in the office, and people are working on things, and there that whole Hewlett Packard management ideal that is called management by walking around or something. That was their, I think they coined that term, but I definitely believe in that. I go and walk the our central office around, talk to everybody, just see what people are working on, and give a little push in one direction or in the other, or I think to myself, I need to talk to so and so about this and find out more about it, that kind of thing. It really does help me to keep my finger on the pulse in a way that just a bunch of pre-arranged meetings don't,
Yeah,
doesn't.
yeah, yeah. That's great. Well, I'm sure we could keep talking about lots of things from education to leadership lessons and learn. We're getting close on time, and wanted to know what's a book that you would recommend everybody read, whether it's um, something current or something that really has been formative for you along the way.
Well, I mean, number one book would be The Great
I
Engagement.
mean, obviously, but we're not
Obviously.
plugging Phoenix Performance Partner.
If you wanted to boil it down to the most important leadership lessons, it would be The Great
Yeah.
Engagement. But if you're looking for another book recommendation, I did mention that it's been pretty valuable for our organization, is James Clear's Atomic Habits, because that um, for us, we have the innovation, we have the research basis, we have the desire and passion to do the work. It's in those moments of how are you going to make yourself incrementally incrementally better by 1% every day? You know, how are you going to make just a little bit of progress every day? Because that's the way, you know, you push that boulder up the hill when you're trying to do something new, different, and exciting and amazing, and you want to be the best you can be. It requires that incremental growth and development, which the ideas in Atomic Habits really help you to see how that could happen.
Yeah.
You know, those are the kind of skills that I don't necessarily have. Some of the those kinds of habits are built through like being a really top-notch athlete, and then, you know, you build your skills very incrementally. Well, as the organization could do the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's great.
You know, so that's been for us. That's probably the most recently been the most beneficial. We did do the 7 habits of highly effective people, right? Yeah, like highly all there. They have that whole franchise of that. That was in the olden days. We did that like 20 years ago, but that was quite important in our early development. We did that. This is actually very similar to Atomic Habits. It's just not as, it's just a little bit packaged a little differently.
Yeah. Well, and so many things come back. If you've got a strong vision and you're passionate about it, it's the habits. I mean, really, when you think about culture is just the aggregate of everybody's individual habits. So you go to work on the habits and you can change a lot of stuff. So that's great.
True.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Kathleen, for your time, for your conversation. Thanks for what you do, making a difference in students' lives. And yeah, appreciate you hanging out and chatting.
And I appreciate you, Kevin. And I appreciate all your good wisdom, coaching, and support over these years.
Yeah.